Micdup.
From Lowlifes.
Awkward intro with the theme song.
Highlights from Lowlifes.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode, 130 of them actually, of the Highlights from Low Life show here on the Mic'd Up app. Glad you're joining us tonight. We have a very special guest with us tonight. Miwok Mike Burrell is back making his second appearance as a Low Life. And then a more specialer guest is our good friend and the managing sports editor. Is that correct? Correct title?
Sports editor,
For
yes.
SFGATE.com. So,
Right.
big time superstar here in the world of sports journalism. So we're glad you're with us, Alex. And Alex is he's doing his best to sit in the recliner and not hurt himself. He recently underwent ACL surgery.
Yeah. It's a very fun thing to admit that I tore my ACL playing kickball as a 30-year-old. But that is exactly how it happened. The one saving grace to it is at least I got the out on the play where I made the injury. But
Oh, so you were
yeah,
on defense?
I was on defense of all things. Playing third base, actually, in this moment. So it's been an interesting journey to finally get on the surgery date. Surgery was just done on Monday. It was perfect time for hanging out, doing nothing but watching World Baseball Classic all weekend and all throughout this week, and to be here to talk to you guys.
That's
Great.
awesome. Yeah, so if you're watching live and you want to ask him more about his defensive kickball injury, you hit that red microphone button down at the bottom. You can leave us a message, leave Alex a question about why he chose the ACL over the MCL. I'm sure he's got a story about that too. So anyway, let's dive right in. We wanted to have Alex on tonight for a couple of reasons. As he mentioned, the World Baseball Classic is underway. That's a lot of fun for those of us that have been starved for the last several months with no baseball. And then also, we're right here a couple of weeks away from opening day, and also wanted to be able to take some questions and discuss the upcoming 2026 season, which may be the last baseball season for a while, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So, Mike, you got anything you want to ask Alex to start with?
Well, I was gonna ask about Mark DeRosa's managerial prospects, but after the loss to Italy yesterday, I'm not so sure that's a good question. But
I will say this: it is hard to find somebody self-emulate their managerial prospects as quickly as Mark DeRosa apparently did on Tuesday. In the span of a single day, he went from maybe being somebody who had the maybe was a front runner for any managerial opening. I know people were wanting him to be the Giants manager in this last go round, honestly, when they fired Bob Melvin, to kind of apparently, taking the foot off the gas and not realizing either he said he quote misspoke, but that also they miscalculated the tiebreaking procedures and didn't realize that the US couldn't afford to lose yesterday if they wanted to guarantee they're advancing to the quarterfinal round. They're, as we record this, it's Wednesday night and Team Italy is actually bailing DeRosa out with a pretty big lead over Mexico right now. But for the most part, the idea that you as a manager completely don't understand the rules, which are pretty straightforward to begin with in a tournament like this, especially when, DeRosa's not even a manager doing other jobs right now. This is his only managing job. How could you
yeah,
not understand every single rule that you were going to have to face in the World Baseball Classic here? And
yeah,
it's a pretty embarrassing day for somebody from start to finish.
yeah, I didn't know he was in the running for the Giant spot. I figured he'd be more likely for the Braves when they got around to it. But
To be clear, I don't think he was necessarily in the running for any jobs, but I do know people have bandied his name around as somebody who, was well regarded by Team USA the last round, has clearly recruited a bunch of these guys. He's very much been in Logan Webb's ear for 18, 24 months to get him to
uh-huh.
pitch for Team USA. So if he's got connections with a lot of superstars, there was definitely a thought that he could be. And he, was with the Giants. He was not necessarily a great player on the field for them, but he was on the roster for the 2010 World Series. So
Right.
you could have that tie-in. But the Braves certainly would make sense. He bounced around quite a few teams that if they ever came open that he used to play for, it would make sense. But it's going to be hard to get the egg off his face in any managerial role now. after this.
Yeah, that's. I had this question laid out before the game yesterday, and I thought, well, I don't know where this is going to go. So, yeah,
It's. I mean, I don't want to excuse him completely, but I do think some of that his job is to get the guys ready to win and then manage the lineup, give guys rest, just like a regular manager. So I can understand a little bit why that happened, but and if this was the major leagues, the general manager would have been making the decisions, right? On or that kind of thing, or at least would have been a advised of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a entire system failure more than anything, especially the
Right.
idea that, the reports that have come out that Team USA, like after they beat Mexico, they stuck around in the clubhouse for an hour or two longer than normal, just kind of all getting together with a few extra beers, drinking and clearly acting as if they had clinched their spot. Whether they overlooked the Italians, however you want to look at it, they did that. But then you look at how DeRosa approached even building the lineup out. The fact that they didn't play most of their starters. You compare it to, not just to use as an example, the Dominicans are playing right now, and they're playing their biggest game in the final game against Venezuela. And both of these teams have gone 3-0. They've destroyed their pool between the two of them each. But all of them have started their main guys out of the gates. And then once you build the big lead, then you sub the guys out. And the Dominicans have done that pretty much every game. I don't think Manny Machado has either been a DH, but he hasn't played even a full 9 innings, which works out when a guy's in spring training and getting ready. But you know, in pretty much every other country that's participating in this thing, this is the most important thing that they're going to do this year.
Right.
And the attitude that clearly is emanating from Team USA doesn't reflect that whatsoever. And taking last night off effectively, like they did, I think very much proves that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, would you say he was playing at like a 162 game season?
He certainly seemed to be. They were
Right.
preparing for a quarterfinals that they weren't sure they're going to make. I mean, from now on, they're going to kind of get lucky and be bailed out by it. The other action happening might actually end up playing in their favor too. Canada pulled off a big win over Cuba today, and if Italy wins the way that the other pool went, it actually means that, I think the US would be in tough shape if they had to face Puerto Rico because they're kind of on a roll. But Canada used a lot of its best pitching today and ended up winning the group. So the US, even if they finish second, will take on Canada in the next round, assuming Italy holds on to win here, and then Italy will face Puerto Rico on one in the those two quarterfinals. And the Dominicans and Venezuelans are playing with the winner taking on Korea and the loser taking on Japan. So when you look at it all like that, for the US, if it turns out that your quarterfinal path is taking on Canada, that's not so bad. But it certainly was set up that you would be on the other side of the bracket. I believe now, by losing, they may have to play Japan in a semifinal by not being the number one seed. I
Right.
haven't completely figured out how it all works out because of all the floating parts, but it certainly is making the US's path a lot harder from here on.
Yeah. We got a timely call in from Babe Shank, so I'm going to throw it in here.
The tiebreaker analysis or computation, runs scored to outs taken, is kind of funky. And yeah, you should have still known what you needed to do to qualify, but it's a weird way to have a tournament tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're all leaning to.
Yeah, it's I will say I kind of end up thinking it's the right move where you don't want to reward teams necessarily for the idea that it's runs allowed based on the number of defensive outs, where it tends to reward you less for running up the score on teams, but more for playing pure clean baseball on the other end. And obviously you win the games, but if you throw three shutouts and then you lose a one game 1-0 and end up in a three-way tiebreaker, that's a level of baseball that you can promote at least, rather than,
Right.
hey, we went out and scored 27 runs against this overmatched Brazilian team, right?
Right.
So I think that's part of the thought here, and it works out better with it being runs allowed to at least promote defense rather than we just want you to go score as many as possible and totally and completely, play impure baseball, if you will. But at this point, it might not end up mattering, but it's certainly it's an attitude thing. And there was one team that clearly came out knowing they needed to win last night, and one team did not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. After listening to the Canada game today, Canada's they're on a pretty high note right now. They're pretty stoked. But your thoughts are that they don't have their prime players to play the U.S. So that gives a little advantage to the U.S. team.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, Puerto Rico is missing a bunch of its big name players too, but Canada, the talent level is just a little lower from the Canadians. They're playing guys even in their starters who are AAA guys and whatnot. And the middle of their lineup is very much missing Freddie Freeman, who's the biggest Canadian star in baseball, and
Yeah.
he is not playing this year. The Puerto Ricans are missing quite a few names, but yet even without Francisco Lindor or Carlos Correa, Javi Baez, they still have Nolan Arenado right now in the middle of that lineup. They still have some names and some guys that bat at the top in terms of Jorge Polanco. They have players that you're going to see in that lineup that you're going to have to be afraid of. Plus, they're pitching on the back end. I mean, Edwin Diaz to close a game if you're losing late in the game is scarier than whoever Canada is going to throw. I think they threw James Paxton today,
Yeah.
who had been retired for the 2025 season, and he
Right.
looked great today, but I still think and a fresh and sharp Edwin Diaz is a much more terrifying prospect that Canada ends up being much more favorable, but it shouldn't have come to this, I think, is the thing that everybody is kind of realizing, and
Yeah.
especially the attitude level. I mean, that's the other thing too. It feels as if everybody else here is approaching this as if, and I don't know about you guys, but like the way that the baseball world is treating the World Baseball Classic is truly more important than the World Series. Kike Hernandez outright said that in Puerto Rico this week. But I think it's pretty evident based on how much all these guys care. And, some of them are begging to play on these teams
Right.
versus in the US, it still sounds like it was a struggle to even get guys to commit to playing on this team full time. Less so this time, but even like Tarek Scooble's weird, like will he, won't he, about pitching a second time and getting everything committed. It doesn't seem like those issues are prevalent in any way, shape, or form in a lot of other countries, the way that they seem to be for the US in particular.
Yeah. So I think national pride seems to be a bigger factor in this tournament for other countries than the U.S. Obviously, just the um, we're so spread out, and guys have different priorities here. There's so much money involved with our guys that they don't have that island pride like Puerto Rico has, or Venezuela, small country, big odds. All of those things. All these different places have these reasons to rally around this tournament, and I'm not sure that we do yet.
And we'll see. I will say, it's fun to talk about this in part because I've gotten to experience. I did when I was in college a study abroad class in the Dominican Republic, and this absolute nonsense class was called baseball and tourism in the Dominican Republic. How do you study being a tourist? Tourism, you just be a tourist. And we went to winter league games down there, and the passion that Dominicans have for baseball still resonates with me to this day. I think it's clear every single moment you watch it out on the field. And there's a little bit, when you watch this game, Dominican and Venezuela is an extremely intense rivalry. They both know each other are kind of the kings of Latin America. They play in the Caribbean Series every year, and it's always a feisty matchup with the champions of their winter league. But to get the best on best like this, there's an intensity here. There's also a respect in this game, but like, there's guys doing 40-second home run trots, but it's not like it's leading to a beanball war. Like there's an element of you can play with all of the passion and pride for your country without it being viewed as disrespectful that I think is really refreshing, honestly,
Right.
out of the WBC.
Got it. All right. So before yesterday, the most controversial thing, Italy upsetting the U.S. is huge and maybe one of the great things we've ever seen in the tournament. But the big controversy prior to that was Randy Arozarena and Cal Raleigh, Mariner teammates. Arozarena goes to the plate, reaches down to shake his teammate's hand, and Raleigh refuses to shake his hand. So I let's expand on that. I mean, is there? I have never heard of anything between those two as kind of a stretch, and I know that Arozarena did that with Will Smith in the last WBC, and Will Smith refused to shake his hand. So, is it a Rosarena thing? Is it a country pride thing? What do you think?
I don't know, Mike. Like, I just feel as if it's a weird thing, but it's also, Randy's never been shy to play a few head games himself. And I think
Right.
even in trying to get the catcher to say what's up and dap you up, it's almost trying to lower them when, for some guys, it's easy to be nice and also be a killer at the same time. And perhaps Randy is able to do that. And it seemed like Cal Raleigh didn't want to give it back to him. If only you know him so well that you know that it might mess with him too if you did him like that. Perhaps that could be why. I do imagine it's not much in the long run, but like it would certainly make any potential matchup with them fascinating. Or if we end up hearing more out of the Mariners this season, I think it'll be interesting. But uh, it certainly raised eyebrows, even if I think we all kind of probably assume it's much ado about nothing. It's a unique one, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, it's not the first time it's happened with our Arozarena either. So I don't know if it just seemed weird. I mean, not even a head nod or anything. Probably just stared straight out at the mouth.
He
But
did. There was at least a glance up towards him, and he said something to him apparently.
right,
But like, yeah. And again, it's kind of fun to for me, like, we have the World Cup coming here this summer, and the World Cup kind of puts a lot of people and a lot of the top international soccer stars in this dilemma at times too, where you're facing off with your teammate on your club team, and that's where you make all your money. But when you play for country, for a lot of guys, that matters a hell of a lot more, and
right.
that's more embedded in the soccer culture, I think. um and then, but you end up seeing those moments and whatnot come out in that instance. I think baseball will be better for it if we see more of those moments happening regularly with this World Baseball Classic, and it being the big event that it's been so far, and we're not even in the knockout rounds, I think is only a good thing for baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would
Mike,
have to agree. I would have to agree with that. And I think this is the first time like Canada has advanced out of Pool A.
Mhm.
So this is the first time in their World Baseball Classic history that they've even moved on. So if I was understanding the game.
uh-oh, Tucson has lost power. Well, we'll see if he comes back. We'll let him pick up on his thoughts. Um, another thing I was noticing, I was at the bar last night watching the game, and some of the people I was with were noticing all the empty seats around home plate because those seats are expensive. Even though the stadiums look sold out, to the untrained eye, people were um, looking at the game last night and going, "There's nobody there. This isn't important." That's kind of a bad look for these guys, isn't
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's also a Tuesday night in Houston in March. I'm sure
it?
from everything you ever watch a Rockets game, the first quarter is barren because Houston's a pretty terrible traffic city, from everything I understand. Um, but I think that's the dilemma. And like, it's funny, you look at the games that are happening in Miami, and Miami's going to host, the two quarterfinals, both of the semis, the final. But like, Miami always looks decrepit almost with how empty it is during Marlins season. But you watch it during the World Baseball Classic. I mean, right now, it was the hottest ticket Miami's had since basically the national title game
Right?
was this World Baseball Classic game. I think tickets tonight were like bordering on $500 just to get in the building for
Yeah.
this Dominican Venezuela game. And so the idea that uh, there's always going to be a little bit of a hit or miss, and especially with countries, right? Like, you're putting people in far flung places. It makes sense that you're not going to have the greatest crowds possible following the Czech team or Australians to Japan, or a good number of Canadians went to Puerto Rico, but it's not like they were going to fill the building otherwise. But you know, MLB and what they're doing with this World Baseball Classic has clearly found something that works by making Miami be the home, putting as many Caribbean and Latin American based countries in Miami, and then we build out the rest of the tournament from there to fill out the rest of it. Because Miami as the home of this place is just electric.
Yeah.
And it hits everything hardest. And I mean, like, literally right now, like, the building's exploding as there's another Dominican home run as we
Yeah.
speak. So
They're I mean, it looked like the stadiums were really full except for those seats around home plate. And I know those are expensive, but the camera's just showing that and it looks like nobody's there. It's
yeah. That's
you know.
also that's the modern stadium dilemma with how expensive those are and all the clubs that you put in. That's, the Niners have that at Levi's at every halftime. The Warriors have that coming out of halftime at Chase Center all the time.
Right.
Um, I I would love for stadiums to not maybe make things so nice for the people with the best seats away from the seat itself that they get drawn out of the seat. But that's baseball, and that's kind of all sports in America right now.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
wondering if they actually sold those seats and people just are, like you said, hanging out at in the private
if
clubs and all
it's
of
all
that.
you can eat or drink in the back there, and you
Yeah,
don't have to sit out in the muggy if the window's open, I'm certain that it's people doing stuff like that.
'cause
Absolutely.
I was watching the Italy-Mexico game, and the whole game, those seats behind home plate, there's like 4 people there, and then just a bunch of open seats, which is it's a really bad look when they're over the shoulder pitcher shot looking at the hitter and all those empty seats there. And then as soon as the fly ball's hitting the outfield, you can see everybody waving flags and the rest of the stadium's full. So just it's a bad look to me, but what do I know?
Well, they're
So,
still collecting the money, as you know.
yeah.
That's what I figure. And I know, like in St. Louis, all those seats are pre-sold, and the food and all that's in the back. And let me tell you, a sweltering evening in St. Louis, so you don't want to be sitting in them seats. So
So you were on a thought about Canada when you lost your internet.
yeah, well, that the phone said, you know what? I'm too hot. I'm turning off. So yeah, I was just commenting that this is the first time in the World Baseball Classic that Canada has advanced to the next round. So they're Canada's pretty jazzed just about that all by themselves. So I think anything from here on out for them is going to be a great day.
Yeah, good point.
It should also be some really good baseball this weekend with the 8 teams that it seems like we're likely to get and the matchups we'll have. I mean, the 2 games that are coming up in Miami with whoever loses this Dominican Venezuela game placing Japan, the winner hosting Korea. Those should be some excellent baseball games, let alone whatever transpires out of Houston. So,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and I mean, meaningful baseball before we kind of get into the grind of the MLB season is always a plus for me. I don't know how you guys feel, but I certainly feel as if this is going to, within maybe not even my lifetime, within the next 10 years, if not sooner, this is going to supersede the World Series in terms of importance. It's kind of in the same way of, each and every year the World Cup, the soccer championships that happen on a yearly basis matter, but the World Baseball Classic feels like it's hitting the World Cup level inside the sport now, and
Right,
we're maybe one, if not two more tournaments away from it mattering that much globally, and the perception just sticking that way
right.
with certainty.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that'll be great. I think so, because now you're entering into like the Olympics and, like you say, the soccer, and it becomes a world event. Yeah.
and I think the rest of the world is looking at it that way. It's us that we gotta catch up.
Yeah, that's the big caveat, if you will. But I think an embarrassment or two, kind of like what just happened, will be the thing that changes that almost.
Yeah, yeah. So, and looking ahead, obviously Japan as a multi winner of this tournament is got to be somebody that we're looking at as a real powerhouse. Who could take down the U.S. besides Italy? If the U.S. rights the ship, I mean, I feel like Japan because the way they play, they're very team oriented in their play, and the pitchers pitch backwards, as they like to say. You start a guy out with the curveballs instead of the fastballs, and work your way the other way. That might be something that really throws the U.S. team off.
I mean, I think this Dominican team is the scariest lineup. It's far scarier than anything the U.S. can throw together, even at its best. And that's even if the U.S. had everybody together. I mean, the Dominicans are batting an all-star ninth right now, and they've left guys home like Rafael Devers and Willie Adames, who would be very good hitters and probably be in the lineup for Team USA, and they're not even on the roster because they're so deep. I mean, they've already tonight hit, I think it's 3, if not 4 homers. They're undoubtedly going to break the record for most home runs during a single tournament in the World Baseball Classic. They're having guys all up and down the lineup just destroy baseballs in Miami. I think it's the Dominicans, and that's the team that would scare me the most if I'm any team left in the tournament. They've seemed to pitch well. They have a pretty deep bullpen, but this offense that they've put together is just terrifying. even when you just consider, Fernando Tatis, Julio Rodriguez, and Juan Soto as their outfield, that's about as good as you can imagine offensively.
Right. Right.
So
And then Italy, are they on a magic run that's about to end?
the tricky part, I will give them a lot of credit. They game planned the hell out of this round robin. They had two big league starters who were primetime guys in Michael Lorenzen and Aaron Nola, and they saved them for Team USA and Mexico. And it's going to be really hard to kind of pitch your way through, I think, to get either of them back on the mound again, especially given the dates and times. I think Italy wouldn't play again till Saturday, and then they wouldn't play till Monday. Maybe Monday you could throw Lorenzen again if you get to the semis, but you got to get there and win a quarterfinal game without him, and then you could maybe have Nola for the title. But winning that quarterfinal game is going to be imperative, and it would probably be against Puerto Rico. So that's a really tricky matchup if you're not certain about your pitching. And so that's the thing to then come check and see from the Italians. But look, if you get there and you have it, you've got two guys who've now, one shut down Team USA, the other shut down Team Mexico. So
Right.
I would not befall them for feeling all the confidence in the world that they can make this run fully go.
Yeah. Mike, what do you got?
Well, I got nothing.
Fair enough.
I'm with Alex. I like the Dominican Republic U.S. game. That's going to be the real challenge, in my opinion, as well. So I haven't seen anything on Korea, and I thought the Korean, baseball association was always put together pretty good teams, and they might have a shot somewhere along the way. But I haven't seen them play or read anything on them. They're 2-2 currently, but
Yeah, the tiebreaker that we have here with Team USA, Italy, and Mexico, it was actually even crazier over in Japan with their pool, where it came down to in the last few innings, Korea couldn't give up more than 3 runs. If not, Chinese Taipei would have advanced. But when they were up 5-0, they gave up a run to Australia and they needed to win by 5 or more runs to advance. Otherwise, Australia would have had the run differential. So Korea scored again to make it 6-1. Australia tacked one back 6-2. And then top of the ninth, Korea pushed one through to make it 7-2. So it was the exact number they could give up in terms of runs, as well as the runs scored and the margin they needed. But they had to hold on in the ninth as if it was a 1-run game, even though they were winning 7-2. And even if Australia had lost by 3 or 4 runs, they would have advanced based off the run differential. So for as crazy as everybody thought this stuff was with USA, Italy, Mexico, it was even crazier when it played out for the other pool for Korea, Australia, and Chinese Taipei.
but Korea's pitching has always been quality, and I assume they have put together a pretty good pitching staff to run through the whole classic. So when you get into the next rounds, uh, if they win a game or two, they may have a shot, huh?
Yeah, it's always a little tricky for those pools. They play a day or two early because of how long the flight's going to be, so you might be able to reline up your pitching a second time through. And with the World Baseball Classic rules, they do let you kind of swap out a few pitchers in between the pool play and the knockout stage. So we kind of won't find out for certain what their full pitching looks like for this round until they settle in here, probably tomorrow. But I mean, Jung Hoo Lee has been their captain. He's leading the charge, the Giant center, now right fielder. He made some great defensive plays and had a really good game in that game against Australia to help power him through. So if they played Japan really tough, which is obviously the big brass coming out of that pool. So if they can do that, you would feel confident that they can give either the Dominicans or the Venezuelans a fight and keep battling from there.
Yeah.
All right. Before we cut to our sponsor, I did have one more. My favorite thing in the whole tournament so far is this Andrej Satorio from Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic or Czechia, whatever it's called now. The 43-year-old guy, pitcher, um, playing for Czechia, and I guess they went 2-2 in the tournament. They played pretty
They
well.
they went 0-4, but
Oh,
they
okay.
they actually, I mean, they were nothing with Japan after 7 innings, and then unfortunately they lost because they gave up 9 in the eighth. But
Right.
Andre is a full-time electrician who plays baseball kind of on the side as like a semi-pro guy, and decided that this World Baseball Classic that he helped his country get here. This is going to be the last baseball he ever played, and he went 4 2/3 shutout innings on the Japanese in Japan, and this happened 3 years after he pitched when the Czechs made the 2023 Classic, and he even struck out Shohei Ohtani that time. So he came back and had an encore for the ages, and even the Japanese fans gave him a standing ovation after the game earlier this week, which was pretty special. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah, unbelievable. And his fastest pitch that he recorded in that 4 2/3 innings was 79 miles an hour.
yeah, that's about what I try to get up to when I throw my fastball in that way. But I don't even come close to that. But yeah, going up against, some legitimate, top level MLB stars. Shohei didn't play because Japan knew they were in, but they still had guys that are, coming over to the big leagues that are MLB superstars, have been Japanese pro ball players forever, and coming at them with at most 79, but sitting mid 70s and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to shut you guys out," and then doing it
Yeah.
is pretty remarkable. Um, but I mean, to me, that's the magic of this tournament and what this
Yeah.
sport can be at its best, right?
Yeah.
Is you just don't know what's going to happen on any given day. You just don't know who's got country affiliation when you find out some guys are there. But the Cubans have quite a few guys who were playing with them that have been playing, baseball for decades. I think Alexi Ramirez played for them in this tournament, and he's 46 years old, and that's kind of if we assume that that's his actual age, which I guess you never know for sure.
Yeah.
There's
He's
other
probably
guys too.
56.
Yeah, so it's pretty remarkable to watch the teams. If anything, the teams that are most fun aren't the teams that are the full of MLB Stars teams, but it's the ones that are kind of putting it together with baling wire and duct tape and seeing what you can scrap out. Finding
Yep.
James Paxton after he retired, or the Canadians had another dude who hasn't pitched in the big league since 2015, and he's just been on a farm in Quebec for a few years. But he said, "Hey, if you guys ever need me for Team Canada stuff, call me up. I'll come be in your bullpen." And Philippe Beaumont came in and has shut things down for him.
That's great.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, good stuff. All right. So we're at the point of the show that we like to call What You Drinking. These mooks aren't drinking, so it's just me, I think.
Well,
But
I'm drinking, but I I don't have sponsor beer. I can't find it here in Arizona.
It's in Phoenix and Scottsdale, but
Well, you're
uh,
gonna have to text me the store.
yeah. Well, 130 episodes, and we have been sponsored in every single one of them by our good friends at Almanac Beer Company in Alameda, California. They are truly one of America's great craft brewers. We get to enjoy the beers. This should come as no surprise to anybody right now that I'm drinking the true California lager from Almanac. Delicious. The one thing we always talk about with Almanac is that the beers are really rich and full flavored. Whether it's a light pilsner or a lager like this that's really refreshing and easy to drink, there's still a ton of flavor. Or if you get into their barrel aged sours and the stouts and the triple IPAs and things that they make, full, dense, big beers, anything you drink from them is going to just be just this mouthful of flavor. So we love the Almanac beers, and we appreciate them sponsoring us. And if you happen to get by the brewery, which I highly recommend, tell them you heard about them from the Highlights from Lowlife show, and they may take pity upon you. All right,
I
we can
think
switch. Go ahead.
I think we can guarantee they might take pity on you at that point.
Yeah, they'll definitely take pity on you. They go, oh, those guys? Yeah, come on in. All right, so let's switch gears now and get into the upcoming Major League Baseball season. Let's talk about Alex. Let's hear your thoughts on the dark cloud that is hanging over this baseball season.
Yeah, I mean the collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners expires after this season ends in December, and from every report that's out there and the tenor and tone of just about everything, the owners are really wanting to push for a salary cap and are going to lock the players out if they don't get it, and potentially, just like we saw back in 2022. But really, I think for the first time since even the 90s, there is some real threat of labor strife and a period where a lockout could seriously impact a full major league season. It ended up just barely impacting things back in 2022, where they started spring training without the big leaguers. They had minor league
Right.
guys going They ended up pushing the first week of the season back to the last week of the season, but everything got sorted out very quickly enough at the end that they played all 162 games, even with that schedule adjustment. And it was still a full season of baseball, even with a little bit of an expedited spring. It did make for a very interesting spring training, which I'm happy to tell you some stories about. But I think this is going to be the first time in my lifetime, even, but certainly since '94, that we have a legitimate threat of lost MLB games. And really, if you look across all of the top American men's professional sports, this really is the first time we've had a threat of lost games at this point since I want to say 2011 and 2015 with the NHL and 2011 with the NBA.
Right. Yeah, it seems to me, I don't remember the guy's name. I'm trying to look it up right now. The guy that replaced Tony Clark for the
Bruce
Players
Meyer
Association.
is his
Yeah,
name.
he's a litigator, and that doesn't bode well.
Well, the entire way that the exit there happened for Tony Clark doesn't bode well for stable leadership there. But it certainly, when you need somebody to put out a fire, the person who's already your lead negotiator taking the reins of the whole Players Association isn't the worst way to go, just to get you through this next year and change.
Right.
If people weren't aware, Tony Clark stepped out and resigned in part because it became clear that he had an inappropriate relationship with an employee and an underling that might have been a close family member of his, which makes things very strange and all of that. But the key to this point, honestly, is that you know there seems to be legitimate contention from major league teams, and I think in part, what the owners would argue, and I think it's a little unfair in a way, but what the owners would argue is by not having a salary cap, there is no cost certainty, and that artificially suppresses the values of the franchise. When you look at, what all of the national entities that do in the media, franchise valuations say, MLB franchises come in significantly under even what NBA and NFL franchises and some of the top soccer or even F1 teams now come in valuation wise, in part because the salary cap means there's no cost certainty. And I guess, I'm not a business major. That's my father and all of that with his MBA. But like the idea that you can know for a fact the general range of what your expenses are helps in a business sense guarantee what your revenue is and whatnot. It would make life easier with the upcoming TV rights that MLB is selling in 2028. And I've written a story about how the future of all television around baseball, not just what you see on the national broadcast, but even the local broadcasts, could be seriously impacted if the owners kind of get their way. They would love to pool together all the local rights because that's the big cash cow if you're
Right.
selling stuff in baseball. If you can sell somebody the rights to over 2,000 games on your platform and everybody has to pay you to get their baseball, that they could reap in the benefit fiscally is the thought. But the only way that they seem to be able to think that can happen with ease is getting a salary cap in. And it sounds as if the owner side is that they're going to push very hard to try to get that to happen. And the players have consistently said we will never accept a salary cap, but we will see how much closer we get to it this time compared to what we've gotten already in past instances.
Right. Right. All right.
Uh,
Well,
it certainly will make for an interesting year. I remember back in 2022, I was working for Bay Area News Group, and when the lockout ended, it basically meant the rest of the offseason had to happen as spring training was getting underway. So it was this very bizarre scene. I was helping our coverage in Arizona at the time where I was living and was actually going mostly to A's camp. And that's the spring training where the A's basically had a fire sale in the middle of spring. So all of a sudden, all these guys have reported to camp. But hey, one day Matt Olson gets traded and he's having a weepy little press conference with the 5 reporters who were there in the dugout as he finds out he's going to Atlanta. But he happens to be from Georgia and he grew up there and he's signing a big extension. So he's both sad that he's leaving, but also happy to kind of have a big contract and some stability. And the next day, oh, nope, here you're meeting in the hallway with Matt Chapman, who's just been traded to Toronto, and he's going out and he's emotional and all of that. Like that, it was kind of one of the most bizarre scenes you can imagine because of the combination of guys. Spring is usually when guys get together knowing that this is the team, and instead that whole Ace team was getting stripped apart all throughout that spring.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it should be it's going to be tough to watch, but we're going to have to follow it. So, uh you can only hope for the best, but I got a god awful bad feeling about this one.
Yeah, I remember in what was it, '94 was the last real shutout, and many people just walked away from baseball, and it took years for them to come back to baseball, to go back to ball games and so on and so forth. So yeah, if there's a lockout and a long dispute, it's going to be bad for the fans as well. So um, the game is for the fans and the people. I hate to see them turning it into a money object. So, but I guess it has to be that way these days.
Yeah.
The nice part is in this day and age in particular, if you want to find baseball, there is baseball to be found, and you can find it streaming elsewhere. I mean, in 2020, before we got baseball restarted back in America, I know there was a lot of effort put into streaming games in Korea for people when they restarted much sooner. But even during a lockout, that can happen. The winter leagues are still going during a lockout in the Dominican, in Puerto Rico, in those places, and it's not hard anymore to find those games. MLB itself is streaming Dominican and Mexican league games during the winter every day at that point. And so if you're somebody who wants your baseball fix in that regard, by the time we get through a winter, even if the lockout happens as everybody's expecting it, I think people can still have their baseball. It's just what's going to happen when we get to spring. And
Right.
other leagues might be playing. You might have to wake up at weird times if you're watching stuff, but at least with MLB, it's certainly going to be a question mark, and we'll have to kind of see what comes of it come next January, February, March.
Yeah, well, at
Well,
least I'll be able to watch baseball from somewhere. I won't have to go down and watch the Cape Catfish play.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's the blessing. It won't affect the minor leagues, and there's, in the Bay Area and around the rest of the country for that matter, there's plenty of teams out there between independent ball and double A, triple A.
Right.
There's still quality baseball. So
Yeah, we're gonna find out. I am fascinated because we also have a dynamic that we've never dealt with before, which is that minor league players are unionized now too. And in '95, MLB teams were getting ready to use replacement players before they finally did end up capitulating with the strike and all of the intensity that was. But I'm not even sure you could use replacement players nowadays because of the fact that minor leaguers are unionized. And
right.
so, what does that end up meaning broad scale is such a fascinating question that I think is actually kind of going underreported as to what, I mean, MLB teams, I think, are just bracing to shut down. I certainly feel as if, it's not hard to look at the Giants kind of making some moves to kind of broaden their business side. They bought a play theater this offseason that I feel like is in part to keep some revenue generation going that's independent of whatever's happening with the baseball team.
Mm.
Well, speaking of the upcoming season, I don't recall in a long time that there were this many teams in the offseason that were trying to improve and make a run. I mean, even the Pirates and the A's made additions that made some sense. The Pirates especially tried on multiple levels to get a bunch of players, and they haven't done that for years. And you start looking around, and there's teams like Cleveland that are competitive all the time. Milwaukee, the Cubs are looking great now. I mean, you can go down the list. I feel like this year could be a real battle. There's some teams really loaded and prepared for this year.
I mean, Mike, I don't know what you feel. This is what it feels like it should be every year, even though I think a lot of times we know it's not. But what the way that the baseball system and what these sports are set up, that if you are bad, you get the most amount of draft dollars, you get the most amount of money to spend on signing bonus. It incentivizes bad teams by giving them the best young players to grow and develop. You still have to grow and develop them, but if you were the Pirates, how are you going to convince Paul Skeens to stay here beyond the time he has to by his contract if you're not trying to win when he's still there? And it makes a whole lot of sense that they said this guy is special. They also have some young kids who are coming through their system. And, there's talks that they have a 19-year-old shortstop who might just come straight to the majors right away because he's looked unreal so far. And he's the
Right.
number one prospect in baseball. I mean, if you're trying to convince some of these guys that you want to play with the Pirates for your life, you kind of need to show them that and invest back in the team. I think the same's happening with some of these A's youngsters, and they've kind of found a core that wants to stick together, and they're paying them all to stick together. And they finally have the stadium that I think they've claimed is the thing they need to actually pay everybody and be secure, finally happening, and even if it's happening in Las Vegas. So there's other ways that kind of show this, but it certainly feels as if, we're at the point now where it's harder to not try, I think, than it is to at least put a nominal effort forward if you want to.
Right. Yeah,
And
I
I know when
but
I look at the spring training standings, Pittsburgh is making a real show of it in the Grapefruit League. 12-6, and so they are making the attempt. They want to make Paul Skeens their franchise player, and they're doing their best to make that happen. So, and that
yeah,
was
it
didn't know your
just
thoughts on the Braves at this point in time. They've been trying to rebuild their team, and they're making a real run in the Grapefruit League currently. So I don't know what you think about them, and how do you think they're going to progress through this season.
Yeah, I mean, in the National League, I think it's hard to find a team that isn't actively trying. I think there might only be two, you would argue, between Colorado and Washington, and even Colorado is at least attempting to start to build back up a little bit. But the Braves last year just kind of had an injury filled and just kind of a season from hell. But all the guys they still have there are quite talented, and I think they're clearly betting that it was a fluky year and that their main guys are still going to come back healthy and be really good again. And so, with that in mind, you know they're going to be trying to be in it. The Marlins have quite a lot of pitching, and they've found some interesting offensive players that are going to try to be in it. The Phillies and Mets both look like the juggernauts they've been. The NL Central, I think, is wide open, and nobody really knows anything about it, but they all seem to be at least nominally attempting to try. So maybe with the exception of the Cardinals, but even then, the Cardinals have so much talent, even if it hasn't clicked in recent years, that if they give them the chance to play together, maybe they'll have something hit in the way that the Cardinals tend to. It's really, it does feel like there are some teams that are way more legitimate as contenders than others. Certainly the Dodgers, certainly the Phillies and Mets, but otherwise it does feel as if the wild card races could be completely wide open.
yeah, agreed. And same in the American League side, really. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
the Orioles seem to go from a team that looked like they were going to win the American League East 2 years ago to fire sale this year. But
But
outside of them, and even the White Sox look like they tried to improve. They traded for a lot of young players and picked up some draft picks and things like that. So I mean, even in the American League, we're seeing that.
the Orioles actually spent a ton of money this offseason. I mean, they signed Pete
Yeah,
Alonso. They're clearly
Alonso, true.
building around their guys to try to say we think in the same way. We think last year was a fluke. We fired the manager. We brought somebody new in. We think we have the talent, and we just need to give them some veterans around them. The White Sox, I'm still thinking they're probably a year or two away from there. But like even signing Murakami, the Japanese slugger who couldn't seem to find a market, just to kind of say like, if you're a big leaguer and you're good and you hit here all of a sudden, we'll trade you for something better, is a pretty good way to do business if you're starting from the ground up in that way. And the AOS could be wide open, though I think the Mariners should be the juggernaut out there. But all the other teams, the Angels never seem to not give up for whatever reason. They always seem to try to do something to try to be competitive.
Yeah.
And the other three teams are all unique and interesting this year, especially the A's, who I don't think have anywhere close to enough pitching, but that offense can match with anybody. So, yeah, it does feel as if it's a massive question mark all across the league in a fun way. For the first time in a while, you can really count the number of teams that are not going to have a shot this year pretty definitively on a single hand. If not, you don't even need the whole hand. And
Right.
that's a big sign of improvement for baseball, especially when you compare it to some of the other leagues.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I, I'm surprised. I mean, let's hone in. Look, no caveats here. We're Bay Area based for the most part with the Lowlifes, and we are primarily Giants fans. And I personally think they had a pretty decent offseason. I know people wanted a lot of the glamour picks and a lot of the glamour signings, but the Harrison Bader signing looks brilliant. Like Jung-Hoo Lee looks reborn, moving to right field. I think some pressure may be off of him now, and Bader looks fantastic. One of those guys that's kind of a unifier. I think Tyler Mahle? He's looked great in spring training. I think they did some very nice things.
Yeah, I feel as if my big question about this team remains where is the creativity to improve them? And, just kind of signing guys and whatnot. This is an organization that finally made the big trade with the Rafi Devers trade. And even that one kind of has a bunch of caveats. And I think they're basically betting on everything that happened after they acquired Devers was almost fluky of the superstar that we've acquired needed time to adjust to this new organization and environment. And we think he's going to be the guy that he's been forever in Boston. They're betting on that in so many ways, but it also, this isn't the most balanced roster build in the world. I think this team could have used an extra starting pitcher who's a frontline starter. This bullpen certainly has massive question marks and could have been improved upon if you maybe not necessarily chase somebody as a free agent, but you look at some guys who might have been available on the trade market out of the bullpen, and there was definitely some opportunities out there for the Giants to get in the mix on those guys. And I do have questions, big picture, about you know what is this team's going to be able to do if you're building on defense in the outfield. Bader might help Jung Hoo Lee, I think, mostly by moving him to right. But Elliot Ramos has at times looked like he can only really be a DH. He has been so porous in left field at times last year. Can he actually improve, or is that just what he is? And at that point, if he's terrible and left and you have to DH him, that's going to put you in a tricky spot with even Bryce Eldridge to be your young superstar that you're building up. So there's a lot with this team, and they've kind of doubled down on something went wrong last year and they don't seem to really know what it was, but they've doubled down on we've got the right guys in terms of our main guys from last year, and we're just adding around them to make this year a better season.
Yeah. Well, I know the Ramos thing. I do like the fact that Ramos is the first guy to acknowledge the problems, and I think that if you're willing to work on it and you recognize it's an issue, that's a start because you could easily be defensive and say it doesn't matter. Um, what do you think with Ron Washington there? And everybody always on Luis Arias, who I mean, he's a great hitter. He puts the ball in play, doesn't strike out. He's somebody the Giants have needed for a long time. At least that style, a guy that gets on base. Yes, his defense is pretty weak, but I feel like Ron Washington was there for a reason, and Arias might be his reason.
And so might Rafi Devers, just to make sure he's as clean and crisp as can be at first base. And
Right.
I do wonder if you give Devers enough time, could he even be not just a good first baseman, but one of the better ones? Because moving from third to first, if you got the hands to be at third, there's things you have to learn about first base, but the hope would be you could pick it up pretty quickly. And I feel like by the end of last year, he was looking really solid at first. Given a full offseason, knowing he's a first baseman now, could he be an excellent first baseman? We'll see. Everything about this team, I think it's weird in a way. It's almost like, you want to believe that they have enough talent to be much better than what we saw them be last year once they made it. I mean, they were 12 games above 500 when they traded for Rafi Devers, and they finished the season at 500. But they were going into a game against the Dodgers on a Saturday night, 3 weeks to go, in a wild card spot, and then they blew that game and proceeded to just completely fall apart. And there's an element of that where no matter what the Giants do this year, because of the moves that they did make by trading for Devers, by signing the guys to the big contracts, by firing the manager and bringing in the biggest risk of a manager that I think you can imagine in MLB, at least in the last half decade, and probably the riskiest pro sports hire since the Colts made a dude off the couch their interim coach when they hired Jeff Saturday for a little bit. Like that's the comp to me in terms of how risky this is, especially with how much is at stake here to bring Vitello in. And so whether the Giants are good or bad, they're certainly not going to be boring this year. I think that's a guarantee.
Well, I can say watching a couple of the early on spring training games, and I was surprised. Usually in spring training, you're seeing all the prospects, you're seeing all the minor leaguers. They're running them through every inning, changing them out. This year, the first couple of games, it looks like they had their starters out there for the first 5, 6 innings. And then they started rotating in some of the minor leaguers and some of the invitees to spring training. And I saw that for 2 solid games. And what I saw looked pretty good. And just being a fan, I thought they looked pretty good on the field. Uh, the first game, the triple play took place, which was pretty unique anyway. And
Yeah, I think the pit like the team that they've built should be able to put up offense in any environment between the power that they have and especially a guy like Devers who has power that should even play at Oracle Park. But also the contact oriented guys like Arias, like Jung Hoo Lee that can go gap to gap. Adamas, when he's at his best, can do some of that as well, even though he's also a power guy. And everything about how they've built this out offensively should work. And it kind of spins around to me. The big question is going to be on the pitching side, particularly the bullpen. But I even just have concerns. Hayden Birdsong was somebody who a year ago I think everybody was super high on. And
Right.
not only have his troubles that he picked up in the middle of last year carried over into spring, now there's even questions as to, what is his role? Where is his confidence at? Where's his head at? And there's a few thoughts here about how much depth does this team really have pitching wise, and how close are they with some of these guys to being ready? And even the bigger question might be, are they recognizing the guys who are worth giving a shot to? Because when you sign these veterans, Trevor McDonald had two excellent starts at the end of last year that kind of almost look Landon Roop esque. And Roop has been a pretty solid dude in their rotation. But now you've kind of set McDonald up to be a bullpen guy for the most part. There's quite a few questions about the way that everything is set up with this team, but it feels like the biggest one is going to be, are they stable enough in the bullpen to keep any leads they have if they're playing close games? And that also matters defensively too. They're going to have their defense challenge all the time. You can love Chapman and Adamas over on the left side, but if a ball's hit over their heads into left field, do you trust Ramos? If the ball's on the ground to the right side, do you trust Arias and Devers? We're going to find out really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we couple of minutes left. Let's take a look around the league. Let's see who. I mean, obviously the Dodgers on paper are the team. Are they going to hold up? Injuries. Freddie Freeman now with the back, and Mookie Betts was inconsistent. I mean, he was very good, but inconsistent at times last year. What do you think?
I mean, at this point, it doesn't actually matter. It seems like the Dodgers could be as injured as possible. They find people off the scrap heap. They do whatever. They'll be in the playoffs, and then you got to deal with them there. They're not invincible, though they've looked at in times the last 2 years, but they certainly aren't. And it's not all. It really wasn't that long ago where the Padres were up 2 games to 1 with a home game in Game 4 in 2024, and had the Dodgers on the ropes, and probably would have gotten Dave Roberts fired had they beaten them that day or the Game 5 that happened right after it. So I I do think baseball is baseball, and because we have the playoffs as they are, they're going to have a chance for somebody to knock them off. But uh, at this point, you just kind of have to tip your hat to what they've built. They've built a juggernaut, and say, "We'll see you guys in October." As much as you hate to say it, it's the truth.
Padres, Rockies, D-backs.
Yeah, the Padres are really interesting. I mean, to me, they're such a big question mark because the talent is so clear at the top. The top level talent is honestly can rival the Dodgers. When you go superstar for superstar, nobody's got a Shohei, but like Fernando Tatis is that level of a superstar on just the hitting side. You obviously can't, compare with Shohei and doing both things, but Manny Machado plays that well. They have all of the pieces, but I really think there's going to be questions there with their starting pitching too. And they actually have the bullpen that I think would make you much more comfortable about any starting pitching questions because of the moves they've made to have such a deep and thorough bullpen, and especially Mason Miller now. It sounds like they're keeping him as a reliever for the time being. So maybe apparently if he gets switched to a starter, that answers one but opens up another question. But yeah, I certainly feel as if you would be most scared of the Padres. The Diamondbacks have been a weird organization the last couple of years where they're definitely trying to win each and every year, and they've made more moves again to keep trying this offseason. But the NOS should, the Rockies will exist. But otherwise, the other 4 teams are going to be, you would think, at least playing competitive baseball against each other as often as possible.
Mike, you live in the National League Central Division country.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think's going on there? I see the Cubs and the Brewers steps ahead of the Reds and Pirates and everybody else. And the
Yep,
Cards.
yep. And like I say, St. Louis, I think they're on a rebuilding mode, and they're just going to be in the middle of the pack. But the Brewers, I think, really have another good shot. In fact, the Brewers signed a kid out of one of our local high schools in the 18th round, and have got him in instructional league here in Phoenix. So I'm looking forward to hunting him down when I get back to Phoenix.
I do think, by the way, the Pirates are really going to be a fascinating team because they have the pitching. And if they figure out a way to scrap together either enough defense or offense behind the pitching, but especially if they lean into the youth and just kind of let the kids who don't know any better kind of go all together, they they they're the team that kind of feels like they need to come out of the gates super hot to convince their ownership to then keep doubling down on this team and make the trades midseason to help them. But if they're the team that kind of does what the Giants did last year and starts out white hot, could they be the team making the Devers trade of this season, if you will, and kind of going for broke for convincing these guys to
Yeah,
be
and the
here?
Pirates
So
bringing in Brandon Lowe. I mean, he's got leadership and he plays the game the right way. I think that was a big move for them to set the tone for these young kids.
yeah, they've at least attempted to build something that could become a competitive team, which is better than what you could say about them for several years now. So
Real quick, the East, National League East. I mean, the Phillies kind of. I felt like they just stepped to the left a little bit. They didn't go forward or backwards. I mean, they lost a couple of pitching parts, and Castellanos is probably addition by subtraction for them.
yeah, the Phillies are very clearly in run it back mode, keeping Real Muto, keeping Schwarber, probably overpaying both of them, but saying we kind of just have to do this for this vibes. Um, I don't blame them because I don't know if they've ever been as talented as the Mets, but they seem to just have something over the Mets and keep beating them year after year when it matters most. And so this is another year where I think it's probably the Mets are the clear most talented team in the division and should be that team. And yet, you kind of have to believe it when you see it. But boy, did the Mets make some moves that show that they are all in on going for it this year. If they play to their talent level, it really should be the Mets and the Dodgers as the two juggernauts in the National League this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I was a little suspect with the Mets because I don't think they're solidified as a team with all their new big stars. And but
Yeah, the rumors about whatever was going on in their clubhouse, it seems like they kind of acknowledged those by letting Alonso walk. They traded Jeff McNeil, who apparently didn't get along with Lindor, but they've kind of leaned into this team being focused as this is Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto's team, and they're running the team. And if you build around them, I really like some of the other guys they picked up this season. I think Marcus Semien could thrive in New York. I love Luis Robert. I was hoping the Giants would really take a look
Right.
at kicking the tires on him. Picking
yeah,
up Freddie Peralta to head up the rotation is an excellent move.
yeah,
Um, they have a deep pitching core and some young pitchers. Even with the ones that they traded away, they still have a bunch of young pitchers who are going to be really good. That I really do think the Mets are built to be a true contender this year. But then they're the Mets, so do you ever really believe that things are going to go right? And
yeah.
my mentor is a big Mets fan, and he has conditioned me to think like him. So I think no, nothing's ever going to go completely right for them at this point. So
And do you think with Lindor's injury that he'll actually be ready to go for the whole 163 game season?
that's the
Or
big caveat for everybody. But I do think they should at least be able to be a competitive team, even if guys have some moments of being banged up. Juan Soto is just that special. And even if you say he needed a year, a little bit of time to adjust year one in a new environment on a massive contract, uh, now year two, I think he could be a very easy MVP challenger to Shohei, which is hard to do.
yes, yeah, yep.
Well, we're probably out of time to go through the. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that I just worry about the Mets up the middle with Lindor being in and out of the lineup if that hammock bone doesn't heal as like they expect it to. So I don't know how that duo is going to work out with alternate shortstops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to go on too much longer, but American League East, Yankees, Toronto, right? Boston's just in this weird place right now. Baltimore's
Boston made some intriguing moves this offseason, though, I will say, kind of buying low on a bunch of guys that could have, this has a little bit of a 2013 vibe to me with Boston, where because they bought so low on some guys, you could see them kind of forming together an FU vibe. But I certainly think Toronto is still built, even when losing Bo Bichette, to go after things. And I really like the moves they made to kind of supplement whatever they were trying to do otherwise.
right.
I really think the team that's the most fascinating to me is the Tigers, though, in the whole AL, because of the fact that they clearly have a young core that's built to be a contender. They've now twice pulled off some pretty impressive series in the playoffs. And I mean, they went toe to toe with the Mariners into the 15th inning in Game 5 in the ALDS last year.
Right.
But they've built up this rotation to kind of go for it, and even bringing Verlander back to help lengthen it. But do you, as the Tigers, if you're a contender, are you willing to risk losing Tarek Skubal for whatever amount of money he's going to end up getting paid? Or if things are kind of teetering, are you willing to maybe, cut off the nose to spite the face a little bit and trade him at the deadline when he's making so much money, is clearly going to go to free agency and seek the top dollar, and is clearly one of the best pitchers in baseball? They're going to be a team to me that whatever happens with them is going to be interesting, whether they're at the top of the AL kind of fighting for a wild card spot, or even if things fall apart a little bit, because they're going for it very clearly.
Right. And Kansas City's a sneaky one to me too. Just they seem to have enough pitching that they can hang with anybody at any time.
Well, shoot, half of Team Italy is Kansas City Royals. So if you look at what they're doing there, I mean, at that point, you might as well think they're going to roll over everybody at this point.
Yeah,
And then I think
we're
covered
getting
the
a
West.
prelim.
Yeah.
I think the Royals need to change their name to the Kansas City Italians for a game at some point this year. So,
well, Alex, it's been great having you on the show. Mike, been great having you filling in tonight, and a low life adjacent people here. We've had a good time. Thanks for watching, and don't forget about our good friends at Almanac Brewing. Thanks for sponsoring us, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week. But really, Alex, we appreciate the time you took to be here tonight very much.
absolutely happy to make sure that there was some low lifes than the usual crew that's here when nobody else could be here. So,
all right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and play us out.
Highlights from Lowlifes.
And Mike, enjoy that Arizona sun.
Highlights
Text me the location in Scottsdale right now.
Lowlifes.
All right. Good night, everybody.
have a good one, you guys.
Night.